Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, where we get a look behind the book. Today, joining me is the lovely Renee Harless. She is the USA Bestselling author, and some of her books include the Sunnybrook Farms Series, which currently has Made for You, All for You, out now. And then her upcoming release, which is dropping on November 12th, is Wild for You. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on. Course. So if you have not read this series, definitely pick it up. They are standalones, but they're all interconnected. And I love a good interconnected series because they're so great. And all of the characters are you just fall in love with them.
Oh, so, thank you. Yes.
So I was just talking to you before we started about the upcoming release, and you're excited about it coming out, and you're going to be moving on maybe from them and starting a new series. So how do you feel about all of that?
It's a little bittersweet because when I started this series, I had gone through probably a solid year of burnout. So I'm really connected with this series and with these characters. And so I was glad to save Andrew for last. He was my favorite one. I was so excited to write his story. And leaving Sunnybrook Farms and Asheville, this nice little community that, I've grown to love so much. It's really hard to say goodbye. But like I was telling you, I always bring people into new series. Everything's connected through all of my worlds. And so we'll see a little bit of them in the next series. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. I love when that happens because it makes it feel so much more like real and relatable. And because you always want to know, like for me at least as a reader, I always want to see them like years down the road or a little later and just see, are they still doing well? What's new with them? Do they have children? Do they have, did they open their business or whatever the thing was that they did in that book? And so I love when you guys do those little like Easter eggs of like dropping them in later. It's my favorite.
You can get bonus content for that like little bit, but you're like, that's not enough. So I make sure you get a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I so love that. So what was your inspiration for writing this series?
Well, I've been writing small towns since 2017. So I am a girl that grew up in a big city. So I've always been drawn to small town. It is my favorite to write. It's my favorite to read. So I always just love family connected stories. Family is really important to me. So found family is my go-to trope. Always. It's always a found family of some sort. So writing it was really fun. And I lucked out the first book, Time for You. He was a hockey player, and that was right before the hockey boom in the genre. So I was like, wow, look at that. But it was just, I really write what I want to read. And so it comes pretty easy figuring out the stories. It's just like, what trope do I want this one to be about this time? What am I feeling? What do I want to read today?
Yeah, I love that. I love the found family. I love that one because a lot of the time in this day and age, you kind of do make your own family.
Yes.
I mean, I've noticed that in my own life. Like, I have my family, but then I have this like extra group of people that I have integrated into my life, and I love that. And small town is like the best. I grew up in Phoenix, so it's like a medium town, but like it's not like that, and I love that. I love small towns.
Yeah, I grew up on the countryside of Richmond, Virginia. So Richmond's, the capital of Virginia, but I grew up in the countryside of it. So I had like a mix of very big city, but I also got the feel of like the small town in it. So I've just always been drawn to it. It just makes me feel warm and cozy. I think that's what I tell everybody. I can actually, I know a lot of people think of small town as palate cleansers, but like it's my go-to. Like a palate cleanser is like a dark romance for me. Give me one of those when I need a break, and then I'll go back to my small town.
I love that. No, I'm the same way. That's my go-to read, like because I want to have like, I love fantasy books, but when I'm reading like contemporary, it usually always circles around a small town. Like those are the ones I lean towards because I just love that vibe, and I love like everybody's in everybody's business and everybody has each other's backs. Because it's like, I live in California now, and it is so not like that. Everybody is like cutthroat and like ruthless out here, and they're like get out of my way. I don't have time for you kind of vibe. And I'm like, I don't like that. I want to like live in this little town where everybody's like helping each other out.
Yeah.
And so I love reading books like that.
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah. So, does writing energize you, or do you feel like it makes you tired?
I get a little bit of both. And I say that because my life is go, go, go all the time. So when I'm on a deadline, I'm definitely energized. I've been known to like write a book in 3 days. Like if it's a deadline, I got to write. So I'll push all-nighters. I feel like I'm back in college some days. But then like with this new series, I'm so excited to write, and it's not a forced write because we don't have a deadline for it yet. So I'm like waking up like, oh, I can write this first thing this morning before I got to go to work, and I'll get a couple thousand words in before I have to leave. So, but yeah, on a regular day to day, if I'm not feeling the book, it can be kind of draining. If you're like in what I call filler chapters, the ones you like, okay, I've got a big scene and I need to fill that inside. Those can be kind of draining. So what I try to do is I'll put on some music I really like, or I'm a Disney fanatic, so I'll put on Disney Park Bench, which is just like somebody literally taking the sounds around them at a Disney park, and I will have that as background, and that just like energizes me to go. So I use writing to give myself energy, not that it's always the most energizing thing for me.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So when you're going back to what you're saying about writing a book in 3 days, so are you the type of person that procrastinates on a lot of things, and like then you get that energy boost of like go, go, go?
I tell my mom I should have gone to college to get a master's in procrastinating. It is, and I fear I've passed it on to my kids as well. I'm a very organized, planning kind of person. So I procrastinate because I know I can get it done. But then I hate the stress of it at the same time. And it drives my family crazy because they're like, why are you staying up for 3 days straight? And it's like, well, I've got this project to finish.
You're like, because I waited till the last minute because I knew I could do it. And I like the adrenaline rush.
It is. That's exactly. It's like, oh, I don't have this deadline till like June of next year. So I'm going to wait till like April maybe to even like get started and plotting it.
Yeah. So are you a plotter or a pantser when you write?
So I started off as a pantser. And now I call myself a plantser because I will kind of know like 5 or 6 big scenes I want, and I'll know where I want them in the story. And then I'll write out about 4 smaller scenes that will fit in somewhere in there. And then those can be my throwouts. Like maybe that scene doesn't work by the time I'm writing because I really just let the characters feed the story. But I usually know I want 5 or 6 things to happen. So yeah, what I do, I know I've seen some people's like plotting methods, and I'm like, you blow my mind. I don't know how you do that. Like the special boards with all the Post-its. I'm like, I'm organized, but that's like a lot. And my characters are always changing what they want to do. So I plants. I write out like chapters 1 through 3 on a piece of paper, and I'm like, I need this scene to happen somewhere between this, and then I need chapters 4 to 6. I need something like this to happen. And I only do them 3 chapters at a time because I know maybe like, oh, this really great idea came to me, and so it's going to change the whole end of the story. So sort of yes and no.
Yeah.
That's my easy planting. That's what I do.
Planting. I love that. So when you are, when your characters come to you, they're coming to you, and are they very solidified and they like kind of boss you around with the story, or do you kind of have more of that say of like where the characters are going?
That's another yes and no. So it depends on like, so because I always write series, but like you said, they can be read as standalones because that's how I like to read them. I have a good vision of all the characters by the time I decide to write a series. So they're already all talking to me. Who gets the next book is decided on who's talking the most. And then we can kind of decide from there, is that book even worth like putting as book 3? Maybe it still needs to wait till book 5, because like Andrew's been talking to me since book 1. And I'm like, you're going to have to wait your turn because I'm not sure I want to write your story because it's a little traumatic. I'm not sure if I want to write your story. So they do speak really loud, but sometimes I have to guide them because then they want to do things that we don't want in a book for small town.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of hand holding with the characters, but yeah, they're coming to me loud and clear. I usually already have a good solid path on at least the first 2 characters' books. So at least always try to glance 2 books ahead.
Yeah, that's really great. That's awesome. So then what would you say is like your writing kryptonite?
Oh, well, we're going to say time in general. Finding time, with a day job and 3 kids. And right now it's fall rec season. So like finding time for anything. But if I get, so over the summer, this is a great example because we were on deadline for the 5th book. Twisters came out and my daughter and I were obsessed. Like Glenn Powell is Andrew, if you need to know like who my inspiration was for that book. If I get hooked into like these movies that I've watched and then we'll stream them and I will just watch them constantly. And then I like can't pull myself away from them. So that's one of those things. It's like, okay, I should be writing, but I'm going to watch this movie again for the 10th time because I can. Because I need almost complete silence to write. I'm not one of those that can have the TV on. I can't have like my kids in the same room as me. I usually have like my noise canceling headphones on and like just like little bits of background. I am not a Starbucks writer. That is not for me. I'm going to get distracted and like I am squirrel. Like that's me. So everything is my kryptonite when I'm writing. Like if my attention, as the procrastinator, if my attention can get pulled by something, it's going to.
It's going to, yeah.
My brain is like, we can get this done. Don't worry. We'll just pull a couple all-nighters. It's fine. It's fine.
So when you're writing, when you find time to write, like in that session, do you have like a goal of like, I want to do this many words or I want to get this chapter or this scene done?
Yes, I'm always a word counter. If I'm going to sit down to write, I have to get at least 1,000 words written. Granted, I'm usually a really fast writer after that first 10K. The first 10K is pulling teeth for me. It takes me weeks to get the first 10,000 out, and then it's just smooth sailing after that. But I usually have to hit 1,000 because I don't feel like I get a good stride until I've hit that 1,000. And usually once I've hit 1,000 words, I'm usually at like 3,000 by the time I finish writing a session. And that usually takes me about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So what I usually try to do is fit it in my lunch break when I get one. So yeah, I don't really have to finish scenes, usually because the characters are always still talking to me and I know by the time I get right back in what exactly I need to say. But yeah, I'm a word counter. I absolutely have to know exactly how many words I'm going to get done.
How many words? Yeah. So if you could go in a time machine and go back to when you first started writing, like your very first book, what advice would you tell your that time self?
Oh, I've thought about this question before, and I actually have 2 pieces of advice for myself. And it's usually what I end up telling people that say they want to write a book. And the first thing I tell them is pocket $10,000, because you don't think about how much it takes to make a cover, to get professional editing done, proofreading, all the little intricacies, running ads, all those things you don't think about. And you're like, oh, that's just gonna be a couple hundred. It's usually not. It starts to snowball. And I always tell them, if you really want to make a solid author writing career, have a good amount of cash available for this. So you don't go into debt, because a lot of authors have to stop because they go into debt. So that's my big, just author advice to myself from starting out. As far as writing goes, it would be really do my research on the people I'm letting into my circle. Like the first book I wrote, the editor dropped me halfway through the second book, like took money and ran. So yeah, and that was back in 2013, which is why the first book came out. And then I had to like unpublish it so I could get the whole trilogy done with the same editor, because you want it to flow and everything like that. So I think vetting the people that are in your circle is almost as important as like going to the writing classes, knowing what you're going to write. I think having the right people in your circle with you is just as important as what you're going to write.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I haven't thought about that, because like really, if you're an indie author, it's like it's a big investment.
It is. And you're relying on everybody else around you to point you in the right direction, because you don't get that guidance of, a traditional publisher or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be nerve-wracking.
Yes,
it is.
A
big leap of faith.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good groups out there. Like Renee Harless got a great Harlow authors group that's filled with so much advice. There's one called the Good Vibe Tribe that's really great. And they've just recently started coming out. So I was like, oh, I wish that was around like in 2013 when I started.
Yeah.
But that was kind of that was the boom of the indie stuff. So I don't think anybody knew what we were doing at that time.
Yeah, it was right at the beginning, like everybody's kind of floundering and figuring it out.
Yes.
So what are some things that you do now to like increase or like hone your craft more of writing? Like, do you do any kind of classes or reading or just reading other novels? Is that like your go-to?
So when I'm not writing, I don't like to read small town while I'm writing because I feel like I'd pull too much influence. So I actually love to read. I do a lot of rereading. I rarely read new novels just because I go to my go-tos because I want to like not think while I'm writing. So I like I read in my downtime. I love the Elle Kennedy Off-Campus series. I don't even know how many times I've read it. Kathleen Brooks has a great Bluegrass series. And that one's more romantic suspense, but I love that series. That's my favorite small town. But I do love a bunch of craft books. There's one, I don't have them up here. I just moved my office upstairs. So I'm like, half my books are still downstairs. There's a great one about burnout, which I read at least 100 times. When I faced my own burnout, I've read Romancing the Beat is one of my favorite craft books. That one's phenomenal. And then there's the ones that I use every day. There's a universal fantasy book. There's just all these little craft books that I enjoy, but I don't really get a whole lot of downtime anyway. But so yeah, a lot of my downtime is I try to read at least one writing craft, author craft book every couple months when I get some free time, which, is few and far between. And when I do get a chance to read, it's usually just like a book I've read 100 times because it's my feel good, makes me feel good when I'm sitting down and reading it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody has those where it's like when they're having a rough day, it's like the one book they'll read and like get lost in it.
Absolutely.
Have that moment. So have you ever dealt with writer's block?
Yes. And that's actually, I think it came around the same time I think I had the burnout. It doesn't happen often. Usually I can work my way through it. But that's how I figured out I was having the burnout was like, it was the end of my, what was I writing at the time? My college series, my college small town series, which is why it's not finished because I think I needed to wipe my hands. I was like, I'll go back to it maybe at some point, but I needed to wipe my hands clean of it because it's more of a dramatic small town series than I was used to writing. And I think I was just pulling so much of myself into it. So I think by the time I finished the 4th book and I was getting ready to start the 5th book and I had no idea what to give this character and he had stopped talking. So I was like, I think this is, and so I tried for about 3 months and I could not get the character to talk to me. And then I was like, I think it's more than just writer's block. Like I was having anxiety, really bad anxiety and all these things. And then I grabbed that burnout book and I was like, oh, I have all of these things. So I took a solid year break and I think it's the best thing I could have done.
Yeah. So for that last book, did you finish it? Or are you going to go back to finish it or is it?
I've had people ask about it because it was a well-received series. You don't get a lot of college small town. I don't know if I'll finish it just because I don't think my heart was in it by the time I reached that 5th book. And he's still not talking to me. I still don't know what his story would be. I have ideas. And sometimes I'm like, hey, do you want to do something with this? So we'll see. Never say never. That's the one nice thing about being an indie author is you can always hey, look, I just published this book from a series from 5 years ago. Have fun.
Yeah.
Reread them all.
I would totally read them. I love books like that. And I don't know. I always like to author. I was like, can you write a Christmas, 10 years down the road reunion or something?
Right. Yeah.
We can have a look at them. Because you just always want to know what's happening with them and where they're at and
yes,
that bit. So what is the most difficult thing about writing for you?
Um, I think it is the self-editing is the hardest part for me because I'm a perfectionist and I will sit and reread my book hundreds of times and I still won't think it's right before I send it off to the editor. And I'm like, I'm paying you to fix this, but it's not at my level yet to send to you to fix. So I'm really hard on myself about that. So that's been the most difficult part. And that's been since the get-go. I like go through personal rounds of like 10 plus times reading over my stuff before I even send it to an editor.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that would be a hard process and like kind of vulnerable.
Very much so, especially when I write, I pull a lot of myself into it. There's always bits and pieces of me in every book I write. So it's like, oh, now I remember why I wrote this scene. And then especially if it's something like when there's a single dad or something and there's a kid and you're like, oh, now I'm sad, or like something in their past. That's why this fifth book was really hard to write. There's a very vulnerable scene with Andrew. So I cry every time I read it. And I think I've read it like 20 plus times. And I'm like, I need to stop. Legend's going to give it to the editor. She can handle it. I don't want to look at it again.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear Andrew and Kelsey's story for sure. I love Talon and Aurora. Like, I think they're my favorite.
Yeah.
But then I just read Owen and Aspen, and I'm like, Owen he was so sweet.
I know. Owen is my proofreader's favorite. So she was like, and she was the one itching for Andrew. And I was like, are you sure you want me? Because Andrew's, I mean, he's up there. He may go above Owen. She's like, he's like right there. He's right there, Renee. I don't know. But Owen was her favorite.
Yeah. That whole ending, and then like I don't want to spoil it, but I like, you can tell like, so I'm like, oh, like that whole ending was just, I loved that ending. So like, they're like tied now for like my favorite.
Oh, I love it. Well, Talon, well, the book I'm writing is Dean's story. So when I tell people that, they get very excited. Because, he plays a big part in Talon's story and in Owen's story. And he's a little bit of a part in Andrew's. So he's in this new series, and Talon, of course, will come in there. So you'll get a little bit of glimpses of Talon and Aurora in the next one.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I was excited when you set the cover and like you included the tropes for this new one.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to read it and go back through and be back there with all of them.
Oh yeah.
But it's gonna be good. I know.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So on the flip side of that, what is your most favorite thing about writing?
Oh, it is the losing myself in a story. And I think that's why I don't usually have a difficult time once I get going, getting the story done, because it completely encapsulates me. I'm a theater kid through and through. So like once I see a scene in my head, it is on paper, ready to go. Like I just let them talk. That's why I can only plot like the 3 chapters at a time. Because if I give too much, they're like, no, we're not doing this today. We're going to go way over here, other side of the stage for this. It completely takes me over, and I can see it almost like a movie as I'm writing it. Which I think a lot of people, when they tell me they read the stories, they say, oh, I just feel like I'm there. Like you pull me in. I feel like I'm watching a movie. I'm like, that's exactly what I want. I want you to feel like in your head, you're reading a movie, you're watching a movie.
Yeah, it totally does. Like the farmer's market. I'm right there. I'm right in there. Like,
I wish it was real because I want to go to one that fun.
Yes, exactly. Like this last book, I was dying at the beginning with the old lady in the book.
Oh, you just wait.
It was so funny.
Miss Henson, she gets so crazy in Andrew's book. It's the best Miss Henson scene I've written, I will tell you. Like I feel like I only made her funnier and funnier.
Oh, I'm so excited. She was great in the last book. I was like, how are these people keeping a straight face?
I know. She was just so crazy.
She was great. That whole scene, I was dying. I think I was reading it and I was at like my son's therapy session and I was like busting up laughing in the waiting room and I was like,
well, good. She did her job. She did her job. That's it.
Exactly. So within writing, because you do, the dual POVs.
Yeah.
What is the most difficult thing about writing the opposite sex for you?
Um, I think, and it's a hard thing for me to read too. Most men do not have that emotional connection that you can see. Like, it's not a visual thing when you're like, oh, look at that couple, they're so in love. Like, the way we see men in movies, like, we know that that's not everyday life. Most men are not like that in their day-to-day lives. I mean, we hope they are, but maybe they are behind closed doors, but the out in public, you know, all the, even what we talk about, chivalry's dead now and all of that. So I think trying to make my male character seem as real as possible, like somebody you're going to see on the street and hear the way they talk, but also know that they maybe are more vulnerable behind closed doors. And try to figure out what exactly they're going to do behind closed doors, because do I really make them go off the wall and be very Hallmarkish, or do I try to keep them as real, like maybe he's just sitting on the couch like watching a television show? Like maybe he's not sitting there like laying out rose petals on the floor, because that's not realistic in like most people's lives. At least not the ones I talk to. I mean, I do try to like, I pull, like, I watch a lot. I ask around. I'm like, what's something, you know, your husband's done nice for you? And they're like, he took me to dinner for like a random Thursday. And I'm like, that's wonderful. I'm going to write that. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. So when you are, you know, pairing up the couples and you're working on like their meet cute, so to speak, is that all pulled from like either you or someone you know, or did that they just come in and say, this is how I met her, this is how I met him?
It is 100%. They just tell me how they're going to meet. I think doing Talon and Aurora's meet cute was my favorite one yet. And I don't know where that came from. All I know is I was sitting in the car on the way to visit my parents, who live about 3 hours away. And I was like, I have this really funny idea. And I ran up on my husband. He's like, that's hilarious. And I was like, okay, so I'm going with that. Okay. So they randomly come to me. I don't usually have one that has happened in real life that I've seen. I wish, because some of them are great.
Yeah. No,
like
I loved how they met.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I loved how they met. It was so different, because I have not read that kind of, like, most of them are like, oh, they met at a coffee shop, or they met at school, or they're like introduced from a friend or a sibling. And I was like, this is so perfect. Like,
so
it was so random. Funny. It was just great. Yeah. I really liked it. I don't know. I think they're always gonna have like my top spot in my heart for sure. But I love all of them.
Yeah.
I just want to give them all a big hug and like.
I know. I wish they were real.
Yeah, exactly. So who inspired your journey with writing? Did you always want to be a writer, or did it kind of just happen?
It sort of just happened, and we'll just give Stephanie Meyer all the praise, because I grew up doing theater, show choir, all that fun stuff. So I was very creative growing up. And then when I moved to this smaller city we live in now, that sort of stuff isn't available. And I was like, well, I have this creative outlet. I need to do something with it, because I'm just going to burst if I don't get it out. And I was watching Twilight, and I was like, hey, I could do this. Like, that book turned into a movie, and I love Twilight. And then what was funny is my first trilogy, which is not Small Town, very, BDSM, hilarious, that 50 Shades of Grey came out like almost the exact same time. And I was like, well, this is a little strange. And I was like, but you know what? I loved writing it so much. And at first I wasn't even going to publish the first book at all. I was just like, I want to see if I could do this. And I was like, oh, well, it's just playing out like a movie. Like, I would be reading a screenplay, like, to do theater. So I might as well just keep at it. And I've had a blast doing it. I'm about to the official 10 years this next year. So I can't believe it's been almost that long. I mean, technically longer, because the first book was 2013, but we pretend that didn't exist. That one doesn't exist anymore. We're going to do 2015. That's the official. But yeah, it's I've enjoyed every bit of it. We'll give all the praise to Stephanie Meyer. I think she is the reason there's a lot of romance authors.
Yeah. She's from my home city.
Oh, that's amazing.
I loved Twilight. I loved her stuff.
Yes.
But I love Twilight.
Yeah. I think 90% of the romance authors that came out in the 2012, 2013 era were all inspired by Twilight. I'm like pretty sure that's in writing somewhere.
Yeah, I bet. I definitely think so.
Yes.
There's a handful of authors that were back then that like really pioneered the indie field that we know now.
Absolutely.
Is flourishing. So, what would you say is like your favorite book boyfriend, or like what you strive for as book boyfriend when you're writing them, like attributes or personality wise?
I am your classic tall, dark, handsome. Like, I want him to be chivalrous. I want him to love his family or whoever he's found as his family. The tall, dark, handsome. I am 100%. David Gandy has always been like even though he's far older than my characters, he is like my go-to image in my head when I'm picturing the characters almost every single time. So when I have to like change a hair color, I'm like, it's not going to look right on David. Like, why? He's not going to look right as a blonde with a buzz cut. But the tall, dark, handsome, but it's more the personality traits. Like, I love the chivalrous guy. I love the guy that loves his family. It doesn't always have to be the mom. It doesn't always have to be, maybe he's just really close with his sisters. And I want them to have goals for themselves. Like, I always want them to be somebody striving to do more, to be better. I don't want somebody that's content with their life. Cause I think everybody has room to grow. So I try to write, particularly my male characters like that, just because I feel like sometimes they get treated poorly in books. Like, they're not always given like that opportunity to grow in their own stories. Like, it's like, oh, the girl's just going to be that part. That's their growth, is meeting the girl. Maybe they've got some other stuff going on.
Yeah. Like, they're well-rounded kind of.
Yeah.
They're hitting all the marks.
Exactly.
So, when you're writing, like, let's say you're writing somewhat of like a twist or like a moment, I know you said you would kind of write the 3 in advance, but you were saying originally like you have a few scenes throughout that you see. Yeah. Do you see those kind of like big twists in those bigger moments, or do they just kind of come up on you?
No, I do. And that's usually what will spark like there's always a big twist in every book. And usually it's what would cause the third act breakup, but I usually try to not write third act breakups because I hate them. I know what will take place, how it takes place, or how that information comes about. Sometimes I already know. Like in Andrew's book, I knew from the get-go how or what was going to happen, but I didn't know how that was going to happen. And I actually spent a lot of time talking to my alpha reader and my proofreader, who I'm very close with, like, how should this scene play out? Because it could come out a certain way and it could be really cringy, or it could come out another way and be really like, wow moment. So we had to talk through that. But then you have Aurora and Talon's story where the scene, I knew exactly what was going to happen. So most of the time I just know what I want to happen, not necessarily how it's going to happen.
Okay. So it kind of leads you.
Yes.
Get led through it.
Yeah. I think the characters, once they start talking, usually we're on the same path. Sometimes they branch out and I'm like, this isn't what I wanted for you, but as long as we get to this point, that's fine.
Yeah. You're like, as long as we get here, you can have your fun.
Yes.
It's not too much fun, but
not
we need
too
to go
much.
Here.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when you're writing, from like when you start with an idea to when you're like at the point where you have like your arcs going out, it's getting ready to publish, about how long is that process for you usually?
It depends. I've been scrambling a lot in the last year, and that's just because of work projects. Usually I like to spend a solid month writing the book and then give a month to the editor, proofreader, and then that next month arcs will go out or whatnot. So it's usually like a 3 to 4 month break, depending on, I usually like to release every 3 to 4 months. I've actually stretched this series out a little bit more for my own sanity's sake. So it's usually just constant. Like, I finish a book, and then I don't usually like to start a new book until the editor has sent me back the previous book I've worked on. And that's because I will forget everything I've written, because I'll be so focused on the other book. And I'm like, did I write this scene? Like, you're asking me questions. I don't know what I meant here. This was last month. I'm on to something new now.
So you take like your little mental break in between to keep the other story alive.
Yeah. So, because I try to still write every day. So what I'll do is, I will, in my pre-planning notebook, I call it, I'll kind of pre-write the scenes that I know I want to take place. Because sometimes those like 5 or 6 scenes don't come to me right away. So I kind of have to like work through, if the story starts with this scene, how could I make this go? So I'll almost do a bunch of different like scenarios of like how this book could go. And so I kind of work on that, so I'm not completely pulled out of the book I just wrote. So that way when the editor does come back and she's like, I don't think you mean what you mean here. And I don't have to sit there and go, well, I don't know what I meant either. So we're both at a loss here. Do I just take this out?
Yeah, you're like, let's just remove this.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of that when you're writing? Like do you write more and then you like cut stuff?
I do not. And that's usually because I am working on it as I go. So I'll write that first, like I do sprints. So I'll write like for 50 minutes and then I'll go back and reread what I wrote. But I'm usually like, if the characters are speaking it, it's going in the book. And it's rare that even my editor will take things out. Usually she's like, I just need a little bit more dialogue here because you wrote 2 sentences and I just need a little bit more. But I usually don't cut a whole lot of scenes, which would make my life easier for bonus content, to be honest. Because then I could just like throw that in there, like, here's a cut scene. No, I usually can kind of cut and paste as I'm going. Like in the middle of a scene, I'm like, nope, we're not going to throw that in there. We're just going to keep going. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Do you enjoy writing the banter or the conversations, or does that not come as readily available always?
I love writing dialogue. If I could just write the quirky banter and like that be a book, I would love it. Because I could do that all day long. And that's usually where I have to stop myself when I'm writing, because I'm like, okay, I could just make a whole chapter of just them arguing about like the size of a chicken. So like it'll be something silly like that. And I'm like, okay, I know my editor does not want to read a whole chapter of this. So let me take it down to like a little bit less as I'm writing. I'm like, we don't need Miss Henson to describe, anatomy or something like that. So I love to write banter. I wish I could write more into it, but I know a lot of readers are like, this has too much dialogue or this doesn't have enough dialogue. There's no easy meat. There's no like middleman anymore.
I don't know. I love the banter. I think that's like, well, for fantasy, I love the world building. Like, yes. I love when they describe the world around them, and then the banter, and that's like a plus. But I love to be in a different universe. But for like contemporary, I love like the little jazz back and forth and the little like
I agree
flirtation arguments that characters have. I think that's so great.
I love banter.
Much more rewarding. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when you go through to work on your cover art, do you enjoy that process with the creative background that you have?
Yes. So, I have to have a cover, or at least know the image I want to use when I start designing my covers. Because designing the covers is my favorite part. It's the only part I keep in house, just because like I told you, I'm a perfectionist, and I love to do graphic design. So I do my own covers. I love that part. But I spend, like, I have a hard time, and I think that's why I have a hard time doing the first 10,000 words of a story, because usually at that point I'm still working on a cover. And it's like, until I get that cover set in stone and make sure like a handful of people like it, I can't continue on. My brain doesn't let me. I need to have the cover first. So I enjoy that part probably more than most people. I hate searching for images, though. It is the bane of my existence. If I could just like tell Google to find me the perfect image and like, no, it's not AI, I would be, it'd be the best thing ever.
Yeah. I did not know that about you. That's really cool that you do your own covers.
Yes. I love it so much. And I used to do other author covers. I just don't have time for it anymore. But yeah, I love it. it's just like a little graphic escape for me. Like when I get stuck in a book, I'm like, okay, let me go make some teasers, or let me go play around with some covers that I'll never use, or I'll do a special editions, just something like that takes my mind off of it. It's a whole nother creative outlet. So that's the part I probably enjoy the most of writing, is doing the covers.
Yeah, that's great. That's really cool. Yeah, I love doing design too, so I totally would probably have fun with that. But yeah, I think nowadays with all of the stuff with like AI and like knowing for sure it is or isn't, it's like
it stressful. Is so hard. Yes. And I feel like it's every day goes by and it's harder and harder to tell, and they're not disclosing all the time, and you're like, but his ear doesn't look that off. Like, how do I know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a rabbit hole for sure.
100%.
With that. So, in your opinion, what do you think makes a great story?
Ooh, so I think there's two things. I think a good story has to have the roller coaster. And that's where it does, the small point and then the bigger points. You get those lots of hills and valleys. And I think a good story has to have all of those. And I don't think the lowest low has to be that third act breakup. I hate the third act breakup. I don't think they're always necessary. And I think you can write a really good low without it having to have the couples fall apart. They can grow together. So I think the roller coaster being well done is a big part of that. And there's a whole book, Romancing the Beat. That whole book is just talking about how to time those hills and valleys right. And I think the other part that makes, especially in romance, that makes a good story is the characters have to have a good backstory. I think they have to have something that within them that makes them tick. And whether that's, a bad past or just their goals and what they want to strive to be, I think for me to connect with a book I'm reading, I have to feel something for those characters. They have to have that good backstory. I know a lot of people are different. Some people are like, I don't want to know why they're at college. I just want to know why they're not hooking up with Guy in like 2A. Yeah. But for me, I need the backstory. I need to know why did she end up at that college? And it doesn't have to be, like the first 4 chapters are them telling the backstory. I just need to know why she's there or why she doesn't like to wear mini skirts or something like that. Like if that's part of her personality, tell me why.
Yeah, I feel like it makes them more well-rounded and like a full corporeal being. When
relatable. And I think we're seeing it a little bit more than we used to, especially with and I say that because I feel like trigger warnings have become such a big thing. And a lot of the trigger warnings I'm seeing in books are like past events that are discussed. And I think that's a good thing. And I think a lot of people are on the fence about trigger warnings, and I see both sides. But I think, if somebody's had a traumatic past, I think it's good that it's talked about because it makes them more relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, so I have a triggered past, but it doesn't, I'm probably weird in this way. Like I do therapy for that side, but I love reading books that have those because then I feel like I'm not necessarily alone. And I'm seeing how that person worked through it.
Yeah, exactly.
In that aspect. So I am totally like, I love that they tell you, that they let you know, hey, this is in there. But I've noticed now, like you're saying, a lot more authors are writing more of that in there. And I think it's of a great benefit because,
absolutely,
for so long, everybody's like, don't talk about mental health. Mental health isn't a thing. Like it's not a whatever. And now it's being embraced and it's being like, not that you want it normalized, but it's being normalized to where if you have that experience, it's okay because look, here's this person with that experience.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So I really like that. I like that authors are embracing that, or even just different types of people. Like I read a book a couple months ago where the main male character was deaf. Yeah. And I loved that. I was like floored because that was like the first book I had ever read where that was in there. Usually it's like a side character and they're not really in it. And it's just like a hint. Yeah. And like this was the whole book was the main character. And I like when it's all inclusive like that.
Yeah. Giving us people that aren't so plain and flat is what I call a lot of like the some of the romance characters I've read, like trying to think. I'm going to call them Hallmark characters. And that, I don't mean, I love me a Hallmark movie. It's my go-to, especially this time of year. But a lot of the characters are flat because you don't care about their background. She's just a small town girl that's moved to the big city and has to move back home. And that's all we care about. And that's fine. But I think if you want to write a really good romance book, give them that backstory. Let me know why. Why did she move to that big city?
Yes. I definitely agree with you there. So with your writing journey, what is the most surprising thing you've learned?
That people like my books. That's always a big surprise.
Yes, we do.
That's always a big surprise. I usually just write for myself and put them out there, and I get really excited when like I get one review or like one email that's like, I love this character. And the other, and that's more a personal note. That's just, I think every author's surprised when somebody enjoys their books. The other one has been the amount of people that are willing to help you along the way. I know I talked earlier about making sure you get the right people in your circle, but then just finding out there's a whole group of people that are willing to help you when you need help. Like maybe it's even just like, hey, I need to sprint. I've got this deadline. I got words to get out. And you've got 10 people are like, hey, I'm writing too. Let's get together. Let's get these words done together. Or, hey, I've got to do a newsletter swap. Can you share your book? And they're like, 20 people are like, absolutely, we can share your book. Here's my little form. You know, I think learning how inclusive the romance community has gotten with the amount of people that have joined in the last couple of years, pretty much since COVID. It's a very deep well of romance authors out there. Well, authors in general. I think COVID was a big push for people to follow their passion and their hobbies. But it's very saturated. So to find those really true good people that are there to like lend that helping hand when you need it has been one of the most, like I started writing thinking like this was a very solo career. This is a very, you're on your own. There's nobody out here to help you. And I learned that the hard way with the editor issue, and, you know, nobody was there to help me at that time. It's like, well, I didn't know that editor was going to be bad. And now there's a whole community saying, hey, don't go to this person. They're going to take your money and run. Or, hey, this person did this to me. I'm making sure they don't do it to you. I think that's been the biggest surprise to me after 10 years is seeing the amount of people willing to go out of their way to help you, to help you succeed, which is amazing.
Yeah. So have you made a lot of author friends over the years
within the community? I have 3 girls that I have been with since day one. Sierra Hill, Jay Nathan, and Samantha Lind. And we've been in this little chat since, I think, 2017. And they've been tried and true. We talk all the time. And then there's other little groups. Like I'm in a little small town author group, and I'm in a little, writers doing this journey for this year sort of group. So, but those are my 3 girls I've known since the get-go, and they've been so sweet, and we're always so supportive. So, and then my proofreader, it's so funny how some of these people in the industry started out as like bloggers or have started out as book reviewers, and then they've started their own journeys. So they've been people I've been friends with, like, hey, you reviewed my book forever ago, and now you're proofreading. This is great. So those are people I've known for a long time, and it's been really great to see them grow and to be along for their journeys too.
Yeah, I feel like the community. So I started my journey with this community a year ago in March.
Yeah.
And I originally started it for doing, someone reached out to me to make a card for their friend's 30th birthday. And she's like, she loves this series. Can you make a card about it? And I was like, sure. But I'm the type of person, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it justice. And so I was like, I can't just haphazardly make this card. I have to read this book. Well, it was like a 5-book series that's still going. Like, she's not done with it. So I read the first book, and then I immediately fell down this rabbit hole of all these other books. And then it led me to ARC reading, because I joined this group that had to do with the book, and all these people were like, we do ARC reading. I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's where you read the book before it comes out, and you review it for the author, give them feedback. And I was like, I want to do that. So it like just totally went. And then everybody's so supportive of each other, and they just love to empower one another and boost up the other person and bring people that are not necessarily the traditional published authors, which they're great. I read a lot of their books, but some of the indie authors like you and the few others that I've gotten to interview on here are so phenomenal. And I'm like, why don't more people know about you? So like, that's why I did this channel, was because I wanted to bring you guys to the forefront and
well, we love you guys. Y'all are the best. Y'all are the best. You readers are like, you blow us away every day.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that about the community, that everybody's like kind of has each other's back, and they're
absolutely
like, let's boost them up. So
absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I definitely, it's been a great experience for sure.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So you were saying, yeah, it definitely has. So you were saying earlier that, you know, a lot of you goes into your characters.
Yes.
Which character do you think is like most like you?
There's two. So the first, my first small town book, Coming Alive, I wrote Avery after I had my daughter, my middle one, and I had probably, I'd say, mid-level postpartum depression. So I wrote a book that I was very emotional, and I was going to write a book that was going to be emotional. So she, emotion-wise, is probably the closest to me. And then character-wise, like just the way they are overall, is probably a tie between Rory and Aspen.
Okay.
Actually, I could probably split all four of those sisters. Or if you combine them all, they're probably all me in a nutshell. But those two are probably the most like me.
Most like you, yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you were writing, who is like your favorite overall character to write? Like the one that like really stuck with you?
Let me think for a second. Because they all do. I always remember the characters. That's so hard. Because I love Avery, that first one, just because she took so much out of me to write her character that she's probably stuck with me the most. But you know what? And I'm forgetting a name, and I knew that was going to happen. So Alex's story was probably my favorite to write from the Sunnybrook Farms series, for her as like the female character, because she went through a lot of emotional stuff as well. So her backstory, and then Avery in general, are probably the two that have stuck with me the most. I usually tell people, like, if you're going to read one of those books, like, have some tissues or something.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely agree with that. So what is your favorite part about being a writer?
Oh, it is just, as a writer, it is getting to put whatever I want in a book. There's no one to tell me you can't write that. And there's no one to tell me that what you want to happen for this couple is impossible. So I can make my own little world. And that has been the most fun part, is the world building part about being a writer. I love just creating these stories and these scenes. And I get so connected to the characters that, like, sometimes it's like, oh, they're not real people. You have to remember that they're not real people. Like, I can make them break up. It's okay. It won't be the end of the world. So that's been my favorite part about being a writer. But as being an author, which I consider a little bit different, is meeting the readers. That is always my favorite. If I could go to every signing available, I would, just to meet the readers. It's like my favorite part. And I'm an introvert, and I love meeting readers.
Yeah, that would be fun. I love going to signings because I love to meet the authors and be able to, like, express to them like how that story moved me, or gave a different perspective of a topic that I maybe had one view on that changed.
Yeah.
So I love that. So what's the biggest thing you feel like since you started writing to now that you've maybe changed or adapted in your writing?
Oh, well, the biggest thing has been going from third person to first person. And that's honestly been the hardest, because when I started writing romance, third person was it. That is, 2012, that's how you read romance. Rarely was it first person. So my Welcome to Carson series, the first 8 books are all in third person. And now it's like nobody wants to read that anymore. And that was the hardest for me, because I love being in the narrator's head more than I like being, at least at that time, being in the actual character's head. It was easier for me to craft their story more and not have to so much rely on them to tell me the story. Thank goodness that the characters didn't care and they were like, oh, we're going to tell you our story anyway. So for me as a writer, that has been the hardest transition, is to go from first person to from third person to first person. And now there's a big push that people don't like first person past. They like first person present now. And I'm not sure I can write that. That's hard for me.
Yeah. Getting the all right. And I just finished a book where it's the main girl is first person.
Yeah.
And then there's two male characters, but they're written in third person.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, when I started reading it, I was like, whoa. And then I like kept reading and I was like, this is very interesting. I've not had a book where I've read it like that. And I was like, how did she do this?
That's like fascinating. I would not be able to switch back and forth. Like, that is so hard.
Yeah. I was like, this is a whole new experience. Cause I'm like I've read a lot of third person and now I prefer first person now more so than third. I mean, I'll read it, but I enjoy first person better. But I was like, this is a trip.
Even as a reader, that would be, you go out of character head to narrator head. That's hard. I can't imagine how hard that was to write. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh. So, do you read reviews that you get?
Sometimes. I will read the ARC reviews, up until about the first week after release. And then I have to tell myself to stay away from Goodreads because it's a black hole of despair. And so I will read, and I'm not upset with like bad reviews. I love bad reviews. I love reading the 1-star reviews on the books I'm reading from other authors because I think they're fantastic. Usually there are things in there that I'm like, I like that. I'm sorry you don't like that. I like that.
Yeah.
But I try to, after the first week after release, I stay away from Goodreads. If I need to pull reviews or something, I'm like, hello, PA. I need you to go to this Amazon and pull me some reviews. I can't do it anymore. So I'll read them. But it's usually, the better of the reviews for that, because you need that boost of self-confidence after you release a book, because it's terrifying.
Yeah. Are you going to have like a celebration on November 12th when this one comes out? Do you do anything special to like commemorate it?
We used to. So we used to have this really awesome brewery near us, and we used to go there. They had a big upstairs. We used to go, and then they closed down. And so I haven't found a new place yet. So I usually just like go out to dinner or something to celebrate. At least this one's far enough in advance where I'm not like gasping for air, like, hey, I just finished this book, it releases tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we will probably go and do something. Thank goodness there's no sports that night. So I'll actually have time to do something, and it's not summer. We're not racing around everywhere. But even if not, my husband usually likes to go and buy me a bottle of champagne or something, and we'll toast at home. If anything, that's what we'll do.
That's great. That's a great tradition. So what is since you write romance, I always like to ask the romance authors this, what is your love language? Do you know it?
I like to tell people my love language is organization. And it's a weird one, but when you live in a chaotic house, of 3 kids and a husband that works a lot and you work all the time and you've got all these things going on, making sure that, you know, the grocery list is ready to go. Groceries have been picked up. You know, everybody's got their schedule ready for the school week. Like we've got projects done. We've got schoolwork done. We've got everything going on. Everything's ready to go. I think it makes, their life easier, and being organized makes me a planner. I don't know what the actual terminology is for my love language. I'm sure there is something for it. Maybe it's just the planner. I don't know, but like
maybe
for
acts
example,
of service.
Maybe
that's kind of like helping you get everything organized and together.
Yeah, but like, yeah, that makes sense because I'm such a planner, which makes the procrastination thing hilarious. Like I am on either side of this. Like there's no in between. I'm either going to have everything ducks in a row or I'm just waiting till the last minute. So like when we could do random vacations to like to the beach. Like I don't need to plan that, but like we're doing a big Disney vacation and I have that vacation so planned out and my parents are coming with us and my mom's like, we're just going to let you do everything. I was like, thanks. That makes me happy.
That's great.
Great. That's already done anyways, Mom. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So what is something that is unique or quirky about you that maybe most people don't know?
Well, the theater part, a lot of people don't know, that I grew up doing that. I don't know. I feel like I don't have anything like weird or quirky other than I'm a little bit terrified of butterflies. That's like the most weird, quirky thing about me. Yeah. My mom said it's because they took me to like a butterfly aviary when I was really young down in like Florida, and a bunch of them landed on me and I've been like traumatized since then. And it's like my family loves to make fun of me if a butterfly is within like 3 feet of me. They're like, oh, the butterfly's going to come attack you. I don't run away or anything. Like I'm not like that freaked out, but I'm just like, no, I don't need to be around you.
That's good. Thank you.
So that's like probably the weirdest thing about me is I'm a little bit scared of butterflies, which is like so bizarre. And I love butterflies. They're beautiful. Just don't want them near me.
Yeah. I'll admire them from afar.
Yeah. I'll watch you flutter 5 feet away. Thank you.
Yes. So plans for future books, you said Dean is next.
Yes. It'll be another 5-book series, family series. The prequel is already out. It was part of the Dear Santa anthology from last year. So that is the parents meet cute. So we'll get Dean, and so the female is the daughter from that prequel. So excited. It will be the Coral Bell Cove series. So I know I've got that series coming out. Like I said, that'll be 5 books. And I am not sure after that. I've been itching to see, I want to write all these different like genres, and I'm like, but I love my small town, so trying to like blend those in has been really hard. So I try to work one series at a time, but I do have an idea for another small town series after that one. That one, I love the kind of Appalachia East Coast area, so I try to stick around like the Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, those like sort of areas. So yeah, so far I've got planned the 5 books. I know the characters, I know their occupations. And I'm super excited to write them. It'll be a really, really fun series. I can't wait for Dean. He is.
Oh, I'm excited.
I could tell you the tropes, but I don't think my PA wants me to yet.
Well, maybe after we record.
Yes, maybe after we record, I can tell you.
And I'll swear to secrecy. I won't say anything. But I'm excited. I love Dean. I'm so excited to have him write his own book.
He's our big goofball, and so I can't wait to write him.
That'll be great. I'm excited. 5 more books. Yay.
Yes.
So my last question for you is, what message do you want readers to take away from after reading your books?
Ooh, I've thought about this before, especially when I started the Sunnybrook Farms Series. And I think it ties to the fact that I love writing the found family trope. And really, my message is, your family is what you make it. Anybody can be your family. Doesn't have to be blood, doesn't have to be even friends. It can be, maybe you meet this girl and now she is your family. That is it. So it's always like, my message is really your family is what you make it. It doesn't have to be the family you came from.
Oh, I love that. That's a great message. And you definitely have that throughout your stories, for sure.
Thank you.
They embrace each other quickly, and they have each other's backs.
That's it.
So I love that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a blast, and it was so great getting to know you better. And I'm a huge fan. I love your
thank you so much
so.
for having me.
Of course. And then for everybody out there, if you can please like and subscribe, and I've linked her information below so you can follow her. And it also has a website where you can find her books and other information about her other series. If you haven't read this one, definitely do it. I mean, you have like a week or so, 2 weeks before the next one comes out. So you could like have a binge reading of the first 3 books and then grab this one, which it releases on the 12th. And it's called Wild for You. I will be reading it and having my review up closer to that release date. And I'm super excited. And thank you again. And if you have a book bestie, make sure to share with them. And bye-bye for now.